A week before my son's big day, I handed him and his fiancée a check for $50,000, an investment in their future happiness. Not only that, but I also paid over $3,000 out of my own pocket for a lavish buffet, a gift from a mother's heart for her son's perfect wedding. But the gift they had secretly prepared for me? Well, it was humiliation. Standing behind a curtain in my own home, I overheard my future daughter-in-law's real plan to turn me, the woman who had given everything, into a free babysitter for a crowd of 15 kids so the adults could have fun. My name is Barbara. I'm a 72-year-old widow from Scottsdale, Arizona, and I never thought at this age I'd have to teach my own family such an expensive lesson about respect. So, pull up a chair and listen to what a mother does to reclaim her dignity when her love is treated like an ATM and a free service. In the world of real estate here in Scottsdale, we have a rule: never invest without doing your due diligence. But me, a 72-year-old widow who spent her life buying and selling parcels under the Arizona sun, I forgot that rule when I invested in the most precious thing of all, my son's happiness. It was an October evening, you know the kind, when the daytime heat of the Sonoran Desert finally gives way to a soft breeze carrying the scent of the saguaro cactus. We were sitting on the private terrace of a 5-star resort, the very place where Ethan's wedding was set to happen in just a few weeks. Below us, the valley stretched out in a fiery orange sunset, and Camelback Mountain stood silhouetted against the sky like a sleeping giant. The scene was perfect. Almost unreal. I looked at my son, Ethan, and that old, familiar warmth spread through my chest. At 45, he was a successful architect, a grown man. But in my eyes, he was still that little boy with the messy hair and the bright, shiny smile. Seeing his eyes sparkle with a joy I hadn't seen since his first wife passed away, well, that was worth more to me than any property I owned. Sitting next to him was Jessica Miller, or Jess as he called her. Jess, 28 years old, a lifestyle blogger, a creature who seemed to be spun from sunlight and dreams. Her smile was as sweet as desert honey, her blonde hair cascading over her shoulders like a waterfall. Everything about her was perfect, from the way she placed her manicured hand on my son's arm to the way she tilted her head, her eyes wide with attention. Unbelievably perfect. Sometimes that perfection made the old rational part of my brain wonder, is this for real? But then the mother's heart in me would just brush it aside, telling myself that my son deserved nothing but the best.
"Mom, can you believe this?" Ethan said, wrapping his arm around Jessica, pulling her close. "This is all thanks to you. We never could have afforded a place like this without you." I smiled, a real, genuine smile. It was the smile of a mother who had spent a lifetime building, sacrificing, and was now finally seeing her reward. "As long as you two are happy, that's all that matters," I said, and I meant every word of it. His happiness was my happiness. It had been the only real truth in my world since my husband passed on. For the 2 years since Ethan introduced me to Jessica, I had opened my heart and my home. I had always longed for a daughter, a confidant to share womanly secrets with, someone I could pass my family's invisible legacies down to. And Jessica, with all her grace and charm, seemed to fill that void. I welcomed her not as a future daughter-in-law, but as the daughter I never had. I showed her how the roses in my garden needed to be tended, taught her my grandmother's secret oatmeal cookie recipe, something I'd never shared with anyone else. I sat patiently for hours, listening to her stories about her strange world of social media, about promo deals and likes, trying my best to understand and be a part of her world. I treated her small successes as if they were my own. That evening, under that Arizona sunset, I felt like all my efforts were worth it. I had a gift prepared, not to show off, but as a gesture from the deepest part of a mother's heart. It's how I show my love. After dessert, my hands trembled just a little as I pulled an envelope from my purse. "I have something for you two," I said, my voice soft with emotion. Think of it as an early wedding gift to start your new life without any worries. Ethan opened it. A silence fell over the table as he pulled out the check. $50,000. I saw my son's eyes widen in disbelief. Jessica brought a hand to her mouth in a dramatic gasp that, only in hindsight, did I recognize for the performance it was. "Mom," Ethan stammered, his voice thick with emotion. This is too much." I reached out and took his hand. "Nothing is too much for my son," I said firmly, looking him straight in the eye. "Money, I can always make more, Ethan. But this moment, seeing you this happy, this fulfilled, that's priceless. I want you to have the best start, a solid foundation to build your future on. Don't worry about the money. Just worry about making each other happy every single day."
And right on cue, Jessica started to cry. Perfect. Clear tears rolled down her perfectly made-up cheeks. She got up, walked around the table, and threw her arms around me. "Oh, Barbara," she sobbed into my shoulder, her body trembling. "You're the most wonderful second mother I could have ever wished for. I don't know what to say." In that moment, any doubt I had just melted away. I felt the warmth of the daughter I'd always wanted, the softness of her hair against my cheek. I hugged her back, patting her gently, breathing in her expensive perfume. "Don't you cry, dear," I whispered. "These are happy tears. From now on, you're my daughter, too." I said those words with all my heart. I had given not just money, but my trust, my love, a place in my heart and my family. Little did I know that, to her, it wasn't a gift of love, but a confirmed investment. And I, the mother who would do anything for her son's happiness, was the most naive investor of all. And it wasn't just the check. I had used my personal reputation to negotiate with the resort, putting down a $20,000 non-refundable deposit, and used my own credit card to guarantee the rest of the costs. I had even promised to personally prepare a $3,000 Taste of Arizona dessert buffet with prickly pear cactus tarts, mesquite flower cookies, and chili-infused chocolates. It wasn't just money, it was my time, my effort, my love. That night, when I returned to my empty house, I looked at the photograph of my late husband and smiled. "You see," I whispered, "our boy is going to be happy." A week before the wedding, the resort was already buzzing with activity. I'd arrived early to help with the welcome baskets for the guests. My suite had a large balcony that overlooked the adults-only pool area. That afternoon, after making sure 50 cream-colored ribbons were perfectly tied, I stepped out onto the balcony to get some air, a cool iced tea in my hand. Down by the pool, Jessica and her sister Lauren were lounging on sun chairs. Their laughter drifted up, just happy vacation sounds at first. But then a slight breeze carried their words to my ears, as clear and sharp as glass. "I can't believe she dropped that much money," Lauren said, her voice a mix of awe and envy. 50 grand, just as an early wedding gift. She's a walking gold mine, Jess. I heard Jessica let out a short, sharp laugh, a sound so different from the sweet tone she always used with me. "A gold mine that has to be tapped correctly, little sister. That check is just the beginning. At this rate, I won't have to worry about those small-time promo deals for much longer. Just let her keep investing in her son's happiness." I stood frozen, the iced tea in my hand forgotten. A gold mine? Tapped? These cold, business-like words were being used to describe my love, my generosity. Lauren sighed, a touch of annoyance in her voice. "Speaking of which, I have a headache. The welcome party is tomorrow, and my roommate's kids have no one to watch them. Their parents are on a weekend trip and asked me to help. Those kids are little monsters. It's a holiday weekend, so I can't find a sitter. I guess I'm stuck in the room with them instead of going to the party." I heard Jessica laugh again, a confident, condescending sound.
What are you worried about? Did you forget who we have here? What do you mean? Lauren asked. I'll just ask my future mother-in-law to watch them, Jessica said, her tone as casual as if she were discussing the weather. Don't worry, she loves kids. Just tell her they're your friends from out of town with no one to help. She'll melt. Think of it as her getting some practice for being a grandmother. My heart skipped a beat. She wasn't just planning a wedding. She was planning to turn me into a babysitter for her sister's friends. The audacity was breathtaking. Lauren seemed hesitant. Are you sure? Isn't that a little weird? What's weird about it? Jessica snapped back, her voice full of smugness. You need to learn how to leverage your assets. I've already talked to some of Ethan's friends. There are going to be about 15 kids at the wedding. I've already put the bug in their ear that Ethan's mom adores children and will be hosting a special kids corner. So she's basically going to be the free babysitter for the entire party? Lauren asked, a note of impressed amusement in her voice. Exactly, Jessica replied, her voice now dripping with triumph, so that we adults can have fun. Besides, she'll be too busy to eat all those desserts she's making. More food for the important guests. See? You just have to know how to use the right resources at the right time in the right place. Lauren giggled. You're a genius. You get her money and her labor. I need to take notes. I felt my chest tighten, making it hard to breathe. Every word was like a shard of broken glass stabbing into my heart. Unpaid help? A walking ATM. All my love, my devotion, my warm welcome was reduced to these cheap, humiliating labels. But it was Jessica's next sentence that froze the blood in my veins, turning my pain into a cold, hard rage. Her voice dropped to an ambitious, venomous whisper. Just you wait. If she's willing to spend this much now, it won't be long before I can get a lot more. And who knows, maybe one day I can replace her entirely. By then, no one will even remember this old woman. Replace. The word echoed in my head like a funeral bell in the dead of night, cold and terrifying. My hands gripped the wrought iron balcony railing, my knuckles turning white. I couldn't breathe. My mind refused to process it. Replace me? The girl I had welcomed as a daughter, the one I was ready to give a fortune to, saw me as an obstacle to be removed, a temporary placeholder to be erased. This was no longer the disrespect of a naive young woman. This wasn't just taking advantage. This was a declaration of war. They didn't just want my money. They wanted my place, my very existence wiped away from the family I had spent my entire life building. I wasn't a mother, a future grandmother. I was a bank account with an expiration date, a seat warmer who needed to be cleared away. A chill ran down my spine, not of fear, but of an icy fury. The initial raw pain quickly hardened into something sharp and clear. The woman who was widowed at 50, who had single-handedly steered a real estate business through recessions, who had taught her son to always be strong and hold his head high, that woman was waking up inside me. I backed away from the balcony, as quiet as a ghost. I slid the glass door shut, their laughter muffled and meaningless on the other side. I went into the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. I saw a 72-year-old woman with the lines of time etched on her face, her eyes weary. For a split second, I saw a pitiful fool. But then I looked deeper, and I saw the fire in those eyes, a fire that had never truly gone out. It was the fire of pride, of survival. No one was going to replace me. No one was going to turn my love into a weapon against me. No one was going to erase Barbara Evans. After that fateful afternoon, I changed. On the outside, I was still Barbara Evans, the devoted future mother-in-law. I still smiled, I still discussed the color of the hydrangeas, I still tasted wine with a pleasant demeanor. But on the inside, a plan was taking shape, as cold and precise as a real estate contract. Jessica wanted a show.
I would give her the performance of a lifetime. My opportunity came the afternoon before the wedding at the welcome party by the resort pool. Guests had flown in from all over the country, bringing a festive mood and colorful summer outfits. I chose an elegant but comfortable linen dress in a shade of turquoise, something practical enough for what was about to happen. The welcome party was in full swing by the pool. I had just arrived, finding a quiet corner to observe when Jessica appeared. In a flowing coral-colored maxi dress, she looked like a vibrant flower in the afternoon sun. She linked her arm through mine, her smile as bright as the Arizona sun. "Barbara, you're here! You look wonderful," she said, her voice so sweet I could taste the artificial sweetener. "Let me introduce you to a few people." Her play began, but this time it was more subtle. She didn't directly assign me my duties. Instead, she led me to a group of young couples, friends and colleagues of Ethan's, who were gathered at the edge of the main pool, their eyes constantly darting nervously toward the shallow end where their children were screaming and splashing. "Oh, David, your son just splashed the Kent's little girl in the face again," one woman complained. "I can't take my eyes off them for a single minute," another man sighed. "I haven't even finished my beer." Right on cue, Jessica spoke up, her voice full of sympathy. "It's so tough for you all. Watching kids in a crowded place like this is a nightmare." She paused, then turned to me, her eyes twinkling as if a brilliant idea had just struck her. "Barbara," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "you just adore children, don't you?" All eyes turned to me. I could only manage a polite smile. "Well, yes, of course." "Everyone, this is Ethan's mother, Barbara," Jessica announced me. "She's an absolute natural with kids. They just flock to her." Then she turned back to me, putting me right in the spotlight, her voice a dramatic, pleading tone. "Mom, you see how stressed everyone is? We want to be good hosts. Could you possibly help keep an eye on the little ones for a bit? Just for a little while, so the parents can relax and enjoy the party?" She had set the stage perfectly. I was backed into a corner. In front of all these tired, hopeful young parents, how could an old woman possibly say no? Refusing would make me look selfish and difficult in front of my son's friends. I looked at their faces, then at Jessica's fake, expectant gaze. I knew it was a trap, but I had no other choice. I nodded weakly. "All right, I'll watch them for a little while." A wave of relief washed over the group. "Oh, thank you so much, Mrs. Evans. You're a lifesaver." And then the trap snapped shut, and it was worse than I could have ever imagined. At first, it was just that group of 5 or 6 kids, but the news of free babysitting spread like wildfire. Other couples heard, and one by one, they brought their children over to be dropped off. "Mrs. Evans, would you mind watching little Ben for me? Peterson told me you were helping everyone out. This is so great." Within half an hour, Jessica's little while had turned into an endless afternoon. The number of children grew exponentially. 5 became 10, then 15, and then I lost count. It must have been close to 20 kids, ranging from toddlers to hyperactive 10-year-old boys. I became the frazzled center of a chaotic, loud, and exhausting daycare. I had to break up a heated argument over a water gun. I had to comfort a little girl who slipped and bumped her knee. I had to do constant head counts to make sure no one wandered into the deep end of the pool. My turquoise linen dress was now stained with sunscreen, pool water, and a sticky ice cream cone. My carefully pinned hair had come undone and was a mess. I looked less like the mother of the groom and more like a worn-out nanny after a very long day. And then came the final, soul-crushing humiliation. As I was trying to wipe a smudge off my dress, a man I didn't even know, probably a friend of a friend, walked up to me. He didn't make eye contact. He just tossed a sopping wet towel onto the chair next to me and ordered, in a dismissive tone, "Hey, you," he said, as if speaking to a staff member. "My son spilt his soda over there. Clean it up and get him another one, no ice." I was stunned. "Hey, you?" He didn't even use my name, didn't show a shred of courtesy. He looked at me as if I were hired help. For a moment, I was about to speak, to tell him exactly who I was. But just then, Ethan and Jessica walked over. Ethan's easy smile vanished the moment he saw the man's dismissive posture and my stunned expression. He took a half step forward, his jaw tightening. "Is there a problem here?" Before he could say more, Jessica's manicured hand clamped down on his arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. She leaned in, her voice a low, urgent whisper in his ear, meant only for him, but my eyes saw it all. "Don't, Ethan. That's Mark Davison, the lead investor for your Arcadia project. Don't make a scene." I saw the conflict warring in my son's eyes. A flash of protective anger extinguished by a wave of calculating panic. He froze. The moment stretched, taut and terrible. Then he visibly deflated. He forced a tight, unnatural smile onto his face. "Ah, Mark, no problem at all," Ethan said, his voice strained. "My mom's just being a huge help with the kids today. Here, let me get that soda for you." He hurried off toward the bar, not daring to meet my eyes. Jessica quickly guided the man away. "Mark, come on, let me introduce you to some friends. My mother-in-law is just a little tired."
But I had seen it all. It was worse than simple neglect. I had just witnessed my son being given a choice, my dignity or his ambition, and with a quiet whisper, Jessica had made him choose. They hadn't just ignored my humiliation, they had actively participated in it. Not a single word of defense, not one correction. They made peace by ignoring my humiliation. In their eyes, keeping a guest happy was more important than their mother's dignity. They had tacitly confirmed my role, the help. I stood there, surrounded by the shrieking of children, feeling a loneliness and shame so profound it hurt. I glanced over at the bar. There were Ethan, Jessica, and this Mark fellow, all laughing and raising their glasses. Every so often, Jessica would throw a look my way, not of triumph, but of phony, pitying concern. Nearly 2 hours later, as the sun began to set and the slightly tipsy parents returned to collect their children, I was finally relieved of my duties. I walked away unsteadily, my back aching and my head pounding. I declined the invitation to stay for dinner and went back to my suite, claiming I needed to rest for the big day. Exhausted, I collapsed into an armchair in my room. I didn't turn on the lights, just let the darkness envelop me. I felt empty. Ethan, my son, did he really not see what was happening? Or did he choose not to see? Just then, there was a knock on the door. Ethan and Jessica came in, all smiles, bringing the noise of the party with them. "Mom, are you tired?" Ethan asked, his tone laced with a thin, obligatory concern. Before I could answer, Jessica jumped in, her voice dripping with sugar. "Barbara, you were amazing. Everyone was singing your praises. They said they've never seen a mother of the groom be so hands-on." They chattered on about the wedding, about how smoothly everything was going. Ethan, completely oblivious to my exhaustion and hurt, said with a cheerful tone, "I think it's good for you to play with the kids like that. It keeps you happy and it's good practice for when we have our own." I looked at my son and felt my heart constrict. He truly thought I was happy. Jessica, as if to seal her victory, patted my hand. "It'll be easier tomorrow, Mom. There will be fewer guests with young children. I hope you'll help us out again, to make sure the party is perfect. I know I can always count on you." Her insincerity was glaring. Her words were a command wrapped in a compliment. And my son just smiled in agreement, completely unaware that he was helping to turn his own mother into a servant. I took a deep breath, pushing down the rage that was threatening to boil over. I managed a tired smile.
Of course. I just need to rest a bit. You two have fun.
After they left, I sat there, in the dark, and I made my decision. After they left, the door clicking shut and sealing the room in silence, I sat motionless in the dark for a long time. I looked out the window at the resort lights, twinkling like fake stars. Then I stood up and walked over to the table where a picture of my late husband sat. I looked into his warm eyes in the photograph. "Well, dear," I whispered, "they're trying to turn me into someone else, someone even I don't recognize." I put the picture down. The hesitation was gone. The pain was gone. All that remained was cold, hard resolve. I picked up my phone. The screen lit up, illuminating my determined face. The first call was to the 24/7 fraud hotline for my bank. "Hello, my name is Barbara Evans," I said, my voice clear and steady. "I need to report suspicious activity on my credit card, the one ending in 7899. I believe I am being coerced into financial transactions against my will. I'm requesting an immediate freeze on this card." The agent on the other end followed the protocol. A few minutes later, he confirmed, "Ma'am, your card has been frozen." "Thank you," I said, and hung up. I didn't stop there. I opened my laptop, typed a short, professional email, and sent it to the resort's senior manager, the man I had dealt with directly. Subject: Revocation of Financial Guarantee, Evans/Miller Wedding. Dear Mr. Harrison, due to a sudden and unforeseen family emergency, I regret to inform you that I am officially withdrawing my entire financial guarantee for the wedding of Ethan Evans and Jessica Miller, scheduled for tomorrow. This decision is effective immediately. I understand that the $20,000 deposit is non-refundable as per our agreement. All further costs incurred from the moment this email is sent will be the sole responsibility of the bride and groom. Sincerely, Barbara Evans. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a tremendous weight lift off my shoulders. But I wasn't done. There was a nagging suspicion, a vague doubt that had been in the back of my mind for a long time. I had dismissed it before as a mother's over-anxiousness, but after what I overheard at the pool, I knew I had to act. Right after sending the email to the resort, I made another call, this one to a private investigator my husband had trusted for years. I asked for one simple thing, a thorough, fast, and discreet background check on the Miller family's true financial situation. I got up, walked to the closet, and took out the emerald green evening gown I had planned to wear. I hung it back up, deep inside. Tomorrow, I would wear a cream-colored silk suit, an outfit not for the mother of the groom, but for a businesswoman closing a deal. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of peace. I ordered a large breakfast. My phone was buzzing non-stop, but I ignored it. I enjoyed my meal, and at precisely 9 a.m., I walked leisurely to the spa. "Your 90-minute Swedish massage is ready, Mrs. Evans," the attendant greeted me. I smiled. "And please ensure I am not disturbed." While I was sinking into a state of lavender-scented relaxation, a storm of biblical proportions was breaking in the honeymoon suite on the top floor. At 8 a.m. sharp, a firm, serious knock echoed on their door. Ethan, still half asleep, opened it to find Mr. Harrison, the senior resort manager. His usual welcoming expression was replaced with the grim look of a man delivering bad news. "Mr. Evans, Miss Miller, I apologize for the early disturbance, but we have an urgent matter to discuss," he said, holding a tablet. Jessica emerged from the bedroom wearing a white silk robe, a dreamy smile still on her face. "What is it, Mr. Harrison? Here to offer early congratulations?" Mr. Harrison did not smile back. "I'm afraid not. Ma'am, sir, we received a communication late last night. Mrs. Barbara Evans has officially withdrawn all financial guarantees for your event." The smile on Jessica's face froze. Ethan blinked as if he didn't understand the words. "Withdrawn?
There must be some mistake. My mother wouldn't do that. This is the email we received at 10:32 p.m., Mr. Harrison said, turning the tablet screen towards them. As per the terms of the contract, when the guarantor withdraws, the full remaining balance must be paid immediately for services to continue. The outstanding amount is $50,347. You have until 12 p.m. today to settle the payment. If not, I'm very sorry, but we will be forced to suspend the entire event. Suspend? Jessica shrieked, her voice high-pitched. You can't do that. This is my wedding day. My apologies, ma'am. It is company policy, Mr. Harrison replied, his tone unwavering. He glanced at his watch. You have less than 4 hours. The door closed, leaving a deafening silence. Panic set in. Ethan grabbed his phone, calling me again and again, only to be met by my voicemail. He ran to my suite and pounded on the door, but the only response was silence and the Do Not Disturb sign hanging neatly on the handle. Time ticked by like sand through their fingers. Outside, staff were setting up floral arches. Musicians were tuning their instruments. The world was proceeding as if nothing was wrong, which only intensified the frantic chaos inside the suite. Ethan paced like a caged animal. What the hell is going on? She can't do this. Finally, he turned to Jessica, a last glimmer of hope in his eyes. Jess, he said urgently, call your father, now. We need his help. He can wire the money. And that's when the sandcastle Jessica had so carefully built began to crumble. But instead of letting it collapse, she skillfully built a new fortress out of tears and lies. She didn't move, but her face, now pale white, contorted in an expression of pure anguish. Tears began to well up, not loud sobs, but silent, tragic drops that streamed down her cheeks. She looked up at Ethan, her eyes a picture of heartbreak. What's wrong? Call him, Ethan urged, panic rising in his voice. I can't, Ethan, she whispered, her voice breaking. I didn't want to tell you before the wedding. I didn't want to worry you. Tell me what? My father, she choked out. He's not well. He's very sick. He had to have emergency heart surgery last week. That's why he and my mom couldn't come. All of our family's savings, it's all gone to his medical bills. Jessica threw her arms around Ethan, burying her face in his chest, her body racked with shudders. I feel so humiliated, Ethan. It's so shameful to have to use your mother's money for our wedding. I really tried to make everything happy and perfect because I just wanted you to have a wonderful day. I feel so worthless, so useless that I can't help you. The lie was perfectly executed. It not only explained her parents' absence and their lack of funds, but it also painted her as a devoted daughter and a selfless, guilt-ridden fiancé. Ethan was stunned. His anger and panic instantly evaporated, replaced by an overwhelming wave of sympathy and guilt. He held Jessica tightly, feeling like a terrible person for ever doubting her. His fiancé was suffering this all alone, and his mother, who should have been their rock, was doing this? Oh, Jess, I'm so sorry, he whispered, stroking her hair. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want to ruin your happy day, she sobbed. Ethan's compassion for Jessica now curdled into a white-hot rage directed at me. His mother, in his eyes, had become a cruel, selfish woman who had chosen to strike when their family was at its most vulnerable. This is unbelievable, he seethed. She can't do this to us. After comforting Jessica for a while, Ethan took action. He called his best man, his voice heavy. Cancel everything. Call the guests. Tell them there's been a sudden family emergency. The wedding is postponed. I'm so sorry. The rest of the afternoon was a blur of dismantling a wedding. After the last calls were made, Ethan looked at Jessica, his eyes hard with resolve. We need to talk to my mother. Mom! Ethan stormed over, his voice tight with anger. Jessica followed, tucked behind him, her eyes red and swollen, playing the part of a fragile bird battered by the storm. I calmly folded the magazine I was reading and set it on the table. Ethan, Jessica, what's wrong? You two look so stressed. How can you even ask that? Ethan roared, losing all composure. What have you done? You are so selfish, so heartless. Do you have any idea how much you've humiliated us? What will people think? You've ruined the most important day of my life. I remained silent, letting him vent his fury. Jess's father is in the hospital, fighting for his life, he continued, his voice thick with righteous indignation. She is going through hell, and you do this? How could you be so irresponsible? Do you have any idea how much this has hurt her? He paused, breathing heavily, and then let loose a question dripping with bitterness. Or is it because you paid for it, you think you have the right to do whatever you want, to just cancel my happiness without a single thought for how we feel? That question was a knife, but one I had been expecting. I glanced at Jessica. She was playing the victim flawlessly. Right on cue, Jessica spoke, her voice trembling and weak, as if she were barely holding back a flood of tears. I guess you just don't like me, she said, looking at me with wounded eyes. You don't like me using your money. If that's the case, why didn't you just tell me from the start? Ethan and I, we would have been happy with a small, simple wedding. We didn't need all of this. It was a brilliant move. She had simultaneously cast me as a selfish monster and herself as a humble, modest woman who didn't care for material things, while also implying that I was a show-off who used money to control people. I looked at the two of them, my son, seething with a misplaced sense of justice, and his future bride, a wolf in sheep's clothing, cowering behind him. I let out a long, slow breath. It was time. Ethan, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Sit down. You too, Jessica. We need to talk like adults. My composure seemed to startle them. They hesitated, then sat on the sofa opposite me. I looked directly at Ethan. You call me selfish, heartless. You say I don't care about your feelings. So let me ask you, son. Last night, when I was forced to look after nearly 20 strangers' children, when one of your guests ordered me around like I was the hired help, did you care about my feelings? Ethan froze, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. You know, a thought occurred to me right then, I continued. I wondered to myself, this future daughter-in-law, this woman who was about to become part of my family, who is she, really? I slowly picked up my phone. While I had been at the spa, the preliminary report from the private investigator had arrived in my email. You said Jessica's father is unwell, didn't you? I asked, my eyes never leaving Jessica. That's such a shame. He seems like a good man. Jessica nodded, the tears beginning to well up again. Then it's very strange, I said, my voice now as cold as ice, that according to American Airlines, Mr. and Mrs. Miller landed in Hawaii 2 days ago for a 3-week vacation at the Four Seasons in Maui, paid for on their credit card. His health must have made a miraculous recovery, wouldn't you say? A heavy silence filled the room. Jessica went completely still, the color draining from her face. Every tear she had on standby instantly dried up. Ethan turned to look at her, bewildered. Jess, what is she talking about? But I didn't give her a chance to answer. I kept going, laying my cards on the table one by one. You said her family was struggling with medical bills? Or could it be because Miller Construction filed for bankruptcy 26 months ago with debts totaling $1.2 million? The house in Arcadia she loves to post on her blog was actually repossessed by the bank last year. Her parents are currently living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Mesa. I looked up, meeting Jessica's wide, terrified eyes. And there's more, Jessica. You said you felt humiliated to use my money. Then why didn't you tell Ethan about your $38,000 credit card debt, mostly for designer clothes and lavish trips to maintain your image? Stop it! Jessica screamed, her voice shrill with panic. But I didn't stop. And finally, Ethan, I said, turning to my son, my voice now filled with all the pain and suppressed rage I had been holding in. The real reason I did this isn't just because of the lies. It's because of what I heard. About the plan to turn me into a free babysitter. About me being nothing more than an ATM. And the worst part? I paused, looking Jessica dead in the eye. About the plan to replace me. Do you know what she said, Ethan? She said, it won't be long before I'm even richer and I can replace her entirely. I placed the phone down on the table. The small sound echoed in the crushing silence. I didn't destroy your happiness, Ethan, I said, my voice finally breaking. I saved you from a lie. I protected this family from a predator. And I protected my own dignity. And if that makes me selfish in your eyes, then that's a price I'll have to pay. Ethan wasn't looking at me anymore. He was staring at Jessica, the woman he loved and defended. But the look in his eyes was no longer love. It was dawning horror and the sickening realization of a world built on lies collapsing around him. The show was well and truly over, and all that was left was a pile of ashes. His entire worldview, his entire love story was disintegrating before his very eyes. "Jess," he whispered, his voice sounding like it came from 1,000,000 miles away. "Is any of what my mother said, is it true?" Jessica didn't answer. She just sat there, frozen like a wax figure. Her perfect mask had shattered, revealing the true face underneath, one twisted in panic and shame. She looked like a gambler who had just lost her very last hand, left with nothing but empty pockets and humiliation. "I asked you, is it true?" Ethan repeated, his voice louder this time, sharper, laced with agony. Jessica's silence was all the answer he needed. And in that silence, something inside of Ethan broke. But before he could react, Jessica's own anger erupted. Cornered, her self-preservation instinct turned her fear into a toxic, spitting contempt. She snapped her head up, her eyes no longer tearful but blazing. A warped smile twisted her lips. "So what if it is? So what if it isn't?" she spat, her voice shrill and foreign. "You believe her, don't you? You always believe her." She shot to her feet, pointing a trembling finger at Ethan. "Look at yourself, Ethan. 45 years old and you're still a little mama's boy. Can you make a single decision on your own, or does everything need mommy's permission?" Her rage was a torrential downpour, a frantic attack to cover her own deceit. She snapped her head up, her eyes no longer tearful but blazing. A warped smile twisted her lips. "So what if it is? So what if it isn't?" she spat, her voice shrill and foreign. "You believe her, don't you? You always believe her." She shot to her feet, pointing a trembling finger at Ethan. "Look at yourself, Ethan. 45 years old and you're still a little mama's boy. Can you make a single decision on your own, or does everything need mommy's permission?" Her rage was a torrential downpour, a frantic attack to cover her own deceit. She snapped her head up, her eyes no longer tearful but blazing. A warped smile twisted her lips. "So what if it is? So what if it isn't?" she spat, her voice shrill and foreign. "You believe her, don't you? You always believe her." She shot to her feet, pointing a trembling finger at Ethan. "Look at yourself, Ethan. 45 years old and you're still a little mama's boy. Can you make a single decision on your own, or does everything need mommy's permission?" Her rage was a torrential downpour, a frantic attack to cover her own deceit. "She gives you money, and you wag your tail like a happy puppy.
She takes it away, and you turn on me. You can't do anything without her money, without her approval. You're weak, Ethan, weak and pathetic. Every word she spoke was a slap in Ethan's face. I could see my son flinch, not from fear, but from the sting of truth in her accusation. As vicious as her motives were, she had hit on a weakness that Ethan himself was now forced to see. His dependency, his obliviousness, it was all laid bare. Ethan took a step back, shaking his head in disbelief. I believed in you, he said, his voice cracking. I was ready to fight the world for you. I was about to turn my back on my own mother for you. He looked at Jessica, no longer seeing the woman he loved, but a cruel stranger. But who are you? Was anything about you real? Your family, your money, your love? Was that real, Jess? Or was that just part of your plan to replace everyone? The question hung in the air. This time, Jessica had nothing left to say. All her ammunition was spent.
Ethan stared at her for a long moment, his expression empty, hollowed out. Then he reached up and slowly, deliberately pulled the engagement ring from Jessica's finger. The diamond, the one I had helped him pick out, now looked garish and out of place. He set the ring on the table next to my phone. "We're done," he said, his voice flat and devoid of all emotion. With that, he turned and walked away. He didn't run. It was the heavy, defeated walk of a man who had just lost everything. He walked through the main lobby, toward the exit, without a single backward glance. Ethan's finality seemed to jolt Jessica out of her stupor. As my son's back was about to disappear through the glass doors, she snapped back to reality. The anger vanished, replaced by the panicked desperation of someone about to lose their last lifeline. "Ethan, don't go!" she screamed, scrambling after him. "Ethan, please!" She caught up to him just at the door, grabbing his arm. "Please, Ethan, don't leave me!" she wailed, and this time the tears were real, tears of pure fear. "I know I was wrong. I'm sorry. It was a stupid mistake. I was greedy. I've learned my lesson." She dropped to her knees, clinging to his legs in a final, pathetic act of desperation. "I'm in trouble, Ethan. I'm in so much debt. Please forgive me. We can start over. I'll change, I promise. I love you. I really do love you." Ethan stood still, not looking down. I could see his shoulders trembling. A part of him, perhaps, still felt pity. But the lies were too vast, the wound too deep. He gently but firmly pried her hands off him. "It's too late, Jess," he said, his voice hoarse. "Love can't be built on a foundation of lies." Then he pushed the door open and walked out into the blinding Arizona sun, leaving Jessica crumpled on the cold marble floor, her sobs echoing in the now empty lobby. A long time later, after the crying subsided, Jessica slowly got to her feet. She wiped her tear-streaked face. She turned and looked at me. There was no more pleading in her eyes, only a cold, simmering hatred. "Are you happy now?" she hissed, her voice full of venom. "You won. You destroyed everything." I stood up and walked slowly toward her. I looked her right in the eye, unafraid. "No, Jessica, I'm not happy," I said, my voice low and clear. "You can't win a game you didn't start. You destroyed my son's happiness. You turned his love into a tool. You tried to destroy my family." I stopped directly in front of her, looking down at this young woman trembling with rage and failure. "This is not my victory," I said. "This is your consequence. This is the price of deceit. And this is a lesson you will never forget. Never, ever underestimate a mother, especially one who has nothing left to lose but her own dignity." And with that, I turned and walked away. I didn't look back at Jessica, and I didn't walk toward the door where my son had disappeared. I walked to the elevator, back to my room. I needed the quiet. As I drove out of that magnificent resort, I glanced in my rearview mirror. I saw Ethan still standing alone outside the empty banquet hall, and Jessica sitting slumped on the floor, her white silk dress looking out of place and pitiful. I lost $20,000 on that deposit. It's not a small amount, but I consider it the cheapest fee I've ever paid. The fee to teach my son a lesson about respect. The fee to free him from a woman who would have consumed his future. And, most importantly, the fee to prove that Barbara Evans cannot be replaced. No investment has ever been more worthwhile. A few weeks went by, and life returned to normal, at least on the surface. The dust from that whole explosion at the resort had settled, but the aftershocks, those still lingered. The chatter about the canceled wedding became the talk of the town here in Scottsdale. You know how these things go. It was juicy gossip for the ladies at their tea parties, a cautionary tale told with a little bit of quiet satisfaction. Did you hear about the Evans boy? That poor Barbara, but goodness, that girl got what she deserved. I heard it all, of course, through my closest friends who'd call to check in, but I didn't pay it much mind. I've lived in this small, wealthy town long enough to know how the gossip mill turns. What I cared about was the silence, a heavy, deafening silence that stretched on for what felt like an eternity, coming from my son. After that day, Ethan didn't call. Not one text, not one phone call. His house is only a 15-minute drive from mine, but it might as well have been on the other side of a silent ocean. I knew he needed his space. A man, especially a proud man like Ethan, needs to lick his own wounds in private. He needed to digest that horrible truth on his own, the truth that his love, his future, had been built on a foundation of lies. He needed to face the wreckage of a life he thought he was building. I gave him that space, even though every morning I woke up and every night I went to bed, the mother's heart inside me ached with worry. Was he okay? Was he getting through this? Was this silence a part of healing, or was it a permanent distance growing between us? Then, one Tuesday afternoon, I was in my garden, my own little sanctuary of peace. The familiar snip-snip of my pruning shears was the only sound breaking the stillness. I was carefully deadheading the spent roses, a task that requires focus, that helps a mind forget its troubles, if only for a little while. The Arizona afternoon sun was gentle, its fierceness having softened. It was in that quiet, peaceful moment that the doorbell rang, sudden and sharp. My heart skipped a beat. I knew it was him. Only he would show up unannounced. I set my shears down, pulled off my gardening gloves, and walked into the house, my heart hammering against my ribs. I took a deep breath before I opened the door. It was Ethan, all right, but it wasn't the Ethan I knew. My son, the successful architect, the man whose collection of suits and ties was larger than my library, the man who always took such pride in his polished appearance, he looked like a wreck. He'd lost so much weight you could see it right away, his cheekbones sticking out more, and his eyes. Honey, his eyes were what really broke my heart. They were sunken, surrounded by dark circles like bruises, and bloodshot from lack of sleep, or maybe from too many tears. He hadn't shaved in days, a rough stubble patching his jaw with a few new gray hairs I'd never seen before. He wasn't wearing a suit, just a wrinkled gray t-shirt and a pair of faded jeans. In his hand, he held a potted white orchid, but even the flowers looked tired, a few of the blossoms already drooping, as if they'd been on the same long, hard journey he had just to get here. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me, and that one look held a whole tragic novel: shame, regret, pain, and a sliver of a plea. "Come on in, son," I said softly, stepping back to let him pass. My voice was calmer than I felt. I let him into the house. He awkwardly placed the orchid on the small entryway table, almost dropping it. We sat in the living room, a room so full of memories, surrounded by the ghosts of happier times. The photo of Ethan at his college graduation, his grin wide and full of hope. The photo of our family on our last vacation to Carmel Beach with his father, just months before he passed. The photo of him as a little boy with a toothy grin, hugging the golden retriever we'd all loved so much. The whole room seemed to be screaming about a happy past, a family bond that this ugly present was trampling all over.
I went to make tea, an old habit for tense situations. The whistle of the kettle, the clinking of the cups, they were the only sounds in the house. I set a steaming cup in front of him. I could see his hand tremble as he picked it up. He didn't speak for a long time, just stared into the steam rising from the cup, as if he was looking for an answer, or maybe just the courage in its swirling patterns. Finally, he looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed and watery. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking, hoarse, "I'm sorry." I waited. I knew this apology was crucial. It wasn't just about the words, but the meaning behind them. A simple "I'm sorry" wasn't going to be enough to patch up a wound this deep. He took a deep, shaky breath, like he was mustering every ounce of courage he had left in the world. "I'm sorry, not for believing her, but for not believing you." He paused, swallowing hard, the Adam's apple in a grown man's throat bobbing with difficulty. "I'm sorry I was so blind. I was so caught up in this fantasy of a perfect family, this perfect life she painted, that I forgot about the one person who was always there, who always sacrificed for me with no strings attached. I took your sacrifices for granted, like the air I breathe. I only realized how much I needed it when I was about to suffocate." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a bitter self-reproach. "And I'm sorry for standing there and letting you be humiliated. That night at the welcome party, I saw it, I heard it. I saw you were exhausted. I heard that condescending tone from that Mark fellow. But I took the easy way out. I chose to please everyone. And in the end, I hurt the only person who truly mattered. I didn't have your back. And that's something I can't forgive myself for." He started to cry. Not the noisy sobs of a child, but the silent, hot tears of a 45-year-old man who was finally facing his own fundamental mistake. A mistake that wasn't just about choosing the wrong partner, but about nearly losing his own moral compass, losing the very essence of the son my husband and I had raised. I didn't say a word. I didn't rush to forgive, didn't rush to comfort. This wound needed to be seen for what it was, to be exposed to the light so it could truly heal. I just sat there, letting his apology, his tears, soak into the quiet space between us. A long while later, when he'd collected himself, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand, I finally spoke. "So what happened after, Ethan? What happened with Jessica?" He let out a long, heavy sigh, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of the world. "She didn't give up. For the first few days, she called me dozens of times a day, sent hundreds of texts. When I blocked her number, she used new ones. She showed up at my office crying and begging." "What did she say?" I asked, my voice even. "The usual things you'd imagine," he said, a bitter smile flashing across his lips. "That she loved me, that it was all a stupid mistake, that greed got the better of her, that I was the only good thing in her life, that she would change. And you?" He looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw a flicker of that old resolve in his tired eyes. "I wasn't blind anymore, Mom. I told her it was over, for good. The wedding was off permanently. Our relationship was built on a lie, and it died the moment I learned the truth." A wave of relief washed over me, but I kept my face calm. He continued, his voice growing colder. "But I didn't stop there. I listened to you. This was a bad business deal. I hired a lawyer. I raised an eyebrow. I've demanded she return everything, the ring, and my share of the money for the other wedding deposits that were in her name.
My lawyer says we have a strong case for recovery based on fraudulent inducement. He said it not with glee, but with the weary tone of a man forced to clean up a terrible mess. Has she paid? Not yet, he admitted. She says she has no money. More tears. But my lawyer is on it. I'm not letting her just walk away, not after what she did. I nodded, a silent approval. My son was finally learning to protect himself. And her career, I added. I've heard a few things. Scottsdale is a small town. Word travels faster than a brush fire. I'd heard from friends in my book club whose daughters followed Jessica's blog. After the wedding was called off, she tried to post a tearful blog entry, I recounted, spinning a tragic tale of family misunderstandings and financial pressures. But the truth, somehow, it leaked out. Maybe from one of the guests who witnessed our confrontation at the resort. People started asking questions. Brands started pulling out. Her follower count plummeted. That whole world of fake luxury and wealth she built, it crumbled. She's been ostracized. Nobody wants to do business with a liar. Ethan listened in silence. I didn't see any joy in his eyes, only a deep sadness for something that had once felt real, at least to him. We sat in silence for a little while longer. The truth was out, the apology was made, the consequences were unfolding. Finally, I spoke, my voice soft but firm. I lost a husband. I cannot lose my only son too, Ethan, not over a lie. I stood up and walked over to his chair. I didn't hug him right away. Instead, I placed my hand on his shoulder, a gentle squeeze, a touch that had been absent for far too long. There's a big crack in our relationship. It's not going to heal overnight. It's like a broken bone, son. It takes time to mend, and even when it does, there will always be a scar there, a reminder. But sometimes it's at the break that it heals the strongest. It's going to take time and trust that has to be rebuilt from both sides. He nodded, not daring to look at me. I understand, he whispered. Then he looked up, and this time he really saw me. And I really saw him. The anger was gone, the disappointment had softened. There was just a mother and a son, both scarred. I opened my arms, and he stood up and fell into my hug, burying his head in my shoulder like a child. He was so much bigger than me, but in that moment he felt small and vulnerable. I held him, patting the back of my 45-year-old man as his shoulders shook. "Stay for dinner, Ethan," I said softly. "I'll make that roasted chicken you like." He nodded against my shoulder, saying nothing, but his hug tightened. That evening, we had dinner together for the first time in weeks. We didn't talk about Jessica. We didn't talk about the wedding. We talked about his work, about my roses, about an old movie we both loved. Small things, normal things. But in that normality, I felt the healing begin. After he left, I stood alone in my living room. I had lost a future daughter-in-law I never really had, but I was getting a chance to find my son again. A more mature, more humble, and hopefully a wiser version. And at 72 years old, after weathering a storm that could have sunk anyone, I learned one final lesson. Sometimes saying no isn't just about protecting your dignity. Sometimes it's a necessary act of destruction. You have to tear down the lies, tear down the blindness, so that from the ashes, something more honest, something stronger can be rebuilt. And that is a priceless lesson. A lesson learned at a very, very high cost.